All right. This is a meeting of the Glen Ridge Board of Education. The board met tonight in executive session. We're now ready to continue with the public portion of our meeting. We had written communications this week from, or since our last meeting, from a number of people. We had several emails from Jeff Egan on COVID protocols, quarantines, and sports, which required some clarification, and also he sought some clarification from the Department of Health. We had an email from Jennifer Pine about inquiring about increasing school hours and with concerns about learning loss, which Mr. Phillips addressed. Unfortunately, our COVID numbers are going the wrong way, and districts are not going to be, at least Glen Ridge is not increasing school hours right now. We had an email from Richard Wilkins with regard to tonight's agenda and the elimination of the aftercare position. Mr. Phillips will be addressing that in a few minutes. And we had an email from Kelly Chung that just came in today with regard to testing. And we will be answering that probably tomorrow morning. So Kelly, if you are listening into this meeting, we will get back to you as soon as possible. The president's report. First of all, many people in Glen Ridge and outside of Glen Ridge have asked me whether I think the governor will close down schools as a result of the increased COVID numbers. As recently as last Thursday, the governor said that he would not do a mass close down of schools. So as far as we know right this minute, closure is going to be left to the discretion of local districts. That could change if the numbers continue to spike, but right now it's up to districts. I want to make note of the passing of Mark Biedron. Most of you don't know Mark, didn't know Mark, but he was important to education in New Jersey. Mark Biedron was the former president of the State Board of Ed. And what he did while in that office impacted every student in New Jersey. He was an incredibly visionary, energetic, intelligent advocate for students. He also founded a private school called the Willow School, which is notable for its sustainability. And he was one of the founding members of SEL for New Jersey, which is a major social emotional learning initiative. His wife, Christy Teig Biedron, was on the governing board of NJSBA. She survives him. So you didn't know him, but he affected every student in our district and all over the state. And he died too soon of Lou Gehrig's disease. And the governor held a coronavirus briefing today. And as I said earlier to the board, he was the most serious that I have seen him in all the briefings since the beginning of the COVID crisis in March. And of interest to schools, he said that indoor sports practices and competitions will be allowed to exceed the indoor gathering limits for individuals, including athletes, referees, and coaches. Outdoor gathering limits will be reduced from 500 to 150 people, and this limitation will apply to youth and high school sporting events and outdoor concerts. To avoid disruption for planned events, the reduction on outdoor gathering limits will become effective on Monday, November 23rd, so next Monday. And he did mention that hockey is in the state's crosshairs, and his administration, unless they see compliance coming out of hockey events, and I presume he's mostly speaking about youth sports, the administration will take action. So these are new restrictions. I expect there will be more restrictions. The governor had been holding briefings Tuesdays and Thursdays. He's going to go back to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday frequencies. So I think that there will be more restrictions coming. And that is the president's report. Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Betsy. I'm going to give you some updates on the schools. First, a facility update. Uh, One of the positive aspects of doing the HVAC projects that we started about a year and a half ago is just the heating in the buildings of the elementary schools. Having experience at it from working there and just visiting the schools, it was um, disproportionate heat throughout the building, but now it's such a pleasant experience. So it's been terrific for our students and for our staff to experience that. I know we haven't gone into the really cold uh, days yet, but we've had some chilly mornings, and it's nice to know that we're in a place where the heating and cooling is managed properly. Um, we did have a significant leak in the tech office last week that caused some damage. There is a maintenance room above the tech office. So we spent some sufficient amount of time addressing that, and I had to bring in an outside group to help us clean up that what the mess that happened because of the leak. The roofing project at Ridgewood Avenue School is moving forward. The preliminaries done some setup. They are waiting for support steel for the rooftop units, and that should be arriving within the next week. There's been a number of COVID cases in the school, but it remains pretty low comparing it to other districts. Um, Almost on a daily basis, we do deal with quarantine situations. We are monitoring the numbers in the schools. We're monitoring the numbers in the town, which have been on the rise for the last several weeks. The current conditions have been a factor in the district deciding not to extend live instruction. Um, as Betsy mentioned, the state has imposed some restriction as far as gatherings, but also on youth and high school sports playing interstate uh, indoor athletic competitions. Um, I want to congratulate the high school marching band, which finished third in the U.S. Band's New Jersey State Championships. They always represent the school and the district and show the best of what we have to offer. The boys and girls high school soccer team started playoffs this week. Tomorrow night, the high school will be sponsoring Black Lives Blue Lives Theater Project, and that will be at 7 o'clock, and it will be a virtual presentation. On tonight's agenda is the elimination of the before and after care director position. We understand how important this program is to the school and the parents. We are not eliminating the program. We have to make some adjustments to how the program is structured. We have taken a significant loss in the program since the pandemic. Last school year, we lost a little bit over $100,000. This year, we are forecast to lose about $225,000 related to the program, and that's because our enrollment is significantly down as a result of the hybrid, individuals choosing remote learning, and parents who are working from home as opposed to commuting, so they're available for their kids either before or after schools. We attempt to continue to operate the program without cutting positions, but we're just at a point in where the district cannot afford to continue to operate at this loss. Unfortunately, the cost drivers in most school programs is personnel. The elimination of this position will be a significant saving for the district. I want to be clear that this is a financial decision and this is driving the recommendation. The district can always choose to bring the position back if there is a need to bring it back. Mr. John Heitman, who's the administrator that oversees the program, will be the main contact for parents who may have questions or concerns regarding the day-to-day operations. Louise Cox, who's in our business office, will continue to handle the invoicing and billing. At our last Board of Ed meeting, a question about next year in the pre-K program, it will be housed. I did meet with the curriculum committee a couple weeks ago and recommended that for next school year that the pre-K return to Linden Avenue School and Forest Avenue School. So Central School will house pre-K through grade 1 next school year. I want to thank the parents that have submitted nominations for the Governor's Educator of the Year Award. The buildings are convening the committees to review the nominations. We would notify the winners and the public in December. And tonight, our Director of Student Services, Jack DeWitt, is here to present the school self-assessment for anti-bullying. Jack, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Sorry, one more time. Thank you, Mr. Phillips, Board of Ed members, Ms. Ginsburg. Tonight, here to present the submission for the school self-assessment for the 2019-2020 school year. Each year, each school is required to evaluate the implementation of its Anti-Bullying Rights Act from the previous school year. So tonight's presentation looks at all of the programs for each of the buildings that were submitted for the entirety of last year by using the self-assessment, which is provided by the state. The self-assessment tool includes 8 core elements, and they address each of the anti-bullying rights, Bill of Rights requirements for the schools. The school safety, school climate team in each building assigns a rating for each indicator based on the criteria and also their available documentation. The maximum grade for each school can be a 78. It remains at that number, and each area has a specific total that I'll show you in a minute on the chart. The completed self-assessment is presented at a Board of Ed meeting, which is tonight, in order to obtain public comment and Board of Education approval. And once the Board of Education approval is granted, the ratings are formally submitted. The due date for completing, certifying, and submitting the self-assessment is December 1st. So there's 8 core elements that are here. In previous years, we've had the Forest, Linden, Ridgewood, and Glenridge High School. And because Central was added last year, that is also now included, and they also had to go through a self-assessment. Core element 1 looks at HIB programs, approaches, or other initiatives that are at each building. There's a possible 15 points that they could receive on the rubric. And here are the scores for each of them: 14, 14, 14, 14, 15. Core element 2 looks at the specific trainings that on the Board of Ed approved policies and how the schools have implemented those trainings for the staff members. Core 3 looks at other staff instruction, training, and programs that are made available with a possible score of 15. Core element 4. Oh, backwards. Oh boy, I'm so sorry. Core element 4 looks at curriculum instruction on the HIB and related information and skills. 5 looks at HIB personnel for each of the buildings. Core element 6 looks at the HIB incident reporting and procedures for each of the buildings. Core element 7 is the HIB investigation procedures that we follow at each of the buildings. And core element 8 is the actual HIB reporting. So the numbers that we look at that are being submitted tonight for approval are at the bottom. Each building, again, has a possible score of 78. And I can't get, I'm sorry, I'm trying, oh, there we go, it went away. Total possible score of 78. The Central School was 76 out of a possible 78. Forest, 76 out of 78. Linden, 76 out of 78. Ridgewood, 77 out of 78. And Glenridge High School, 76 out of 78. The important part to think about with the numbers that we present are that each of the schools, because it's a self-assessment, each year is able to look at what they're doing and to look at those areas where they have a weakness and to adjust those. So if they feel that they haven't had enough programs in a specific area, that's something that they can look at and then for the following year correct. And that's part of the procedure that we have in place. Once the scores are approved, again, they'll be submitted and then to the state, and then we will have the report card, which usually comes a couple months after. Generally, it used to come in January. I'm not sure with COVID how long it will be delayed. I know this year it was delayed until April or May before we actually received it. So once that is received, that is also presented at a Board of Ed meeting, and that will be posted online. This presentation also will be posted online tomorrow. Thank you.
Jack, question?
Yes.
When you're talking about the self-assessment, is there, they use a rubric, yes?
Correct. There's a rubric for each core element. So for example, you see core element number 5, HIB personnel. The state provides a rubric and it breaks it down into several areas, and then they get so many points per area, and then that would enter the maximum total possible. So yes, there's a rubric that the schools that I provide to them.
Does the rubric change year to year, or does it stay pretty much the same?
It seems to have stayed pretty similar in the last couple of years. There hasn't been any major changes that I've noticed.
Okay, thank you. Board members, other questions for Jack? Heather.
How about now?
Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you.
Sorry. You mentioned that schools can use this to review and identify areas to improve on. Can you talk about any areas they've identified they want to improve on, or programs they did this year based off of last year's results in efforts to improve?
So that they would look at each area. I would have to go back to talk to the building principals and the school safety team to see what they had approved on. When they are doing the self-assessment, if there were programs, let's say they felt that they were not strong in their school level incident reporting, for example, if they felt that that was a weakness, that's something that they can talk about and we could change. I know last year when we meet twice a year as the entire district meets. The school safety teams from each building, as required, at least twice a year we meet. When we met, we sat down and we looked at different areas to see. I don't recall, to be honest, what the changes were, but I could look into that and get back to you on it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions on the school self-assessment? Oh, I'm sorry, Anthony, yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. On the core element number 7, HIB investigating procedures, is that, Jack, just a routine of going through a certain list of questions of investigation, or is that some other measure of effectiveness in terms of how well HIBs are investigated?
It's looking at the procedures for the buildings. So the questions might range, and I can look at those and give you a copy to have a better idea of the rubric. But it'll say something to the effect of, are the programs for investigations maintaining the timelines? And then the school has to actually look at the data that they have that would provide and support that. Is the investigations, are they following the HIB procedures that we have in place? And they have to then have the documentation to support each of those things. So they're self-analyzing what's occurring.
Okay, and this is a self-analysis of prescribed steps.
Yes, that are provided by the state through this rubric, correct?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Jack? Okay, there are none. Thank you, Jack, for that report.
You are welcome.
All right, now we have come to the first public comment period for comments or questions on agenda items. If you have a comment or question, go down to the participants tab on the bottom of your screen, central bottom of your screen, and you can use the raise your hand function to raise your hand. I will recognize you. You have, please, when I recognize you, state your name and confirm your Glenridge residency. You have 2 minutes, 2 minutes in the first public comment period, and then 2 minutes again in the second public comment period at the end of the meeting. I will be the timer. And if you have multiple questions, please ask them all at the beginning of your comment, and we'll answer them in the order that they've been given. So please raise your hands and let's hear what you have to say. I see Richard Wilkins.
Hi, good evening. Richard Wilkins, Mayolas Avenue, Glenridge. Thank you for the explanation behind the getting rid of the position for before care, after care. Just a couple of questions around that. You mentioned that you may look at it in the future and bring the position back.
I think he's muted.
No, I'm not. Sorry.
He's not?
No, we can hear him.
You can hear him?
Okay.
I can hear him.
Okay.
We can hear you, Richard.
Okay, so with that in mind, do you feel that post-COVID that this position will still not be needed? And if that's the case, what was that based on? And if it's not the case and you feel that post-COVID it will be needed again, was furlough even considered in order to make it at least slightly more enticing to retain this particular resource?
Okay. Mr. Phillips?
Thank you. As far as post-COVID, I think there's just a lot of unknowns at this point. One of the things that we're looking at, as I mentioned earlier, was there's just a number of parents who have changed the way they operate with their job. And we believe that that may cause a decrease in what was our traditional enrollment. We did consider a furlough, but I think there's just a lot of unknowns, and to place a person on furlough is giving them the anticipation that it will be back, and I don't think we can make that statement at this time. We are dealing with a lot of unknowns as far as within the programs, but also within the district budget of how we're operating, and I think we're going to be looking at a lot of structure as we delve into our budget process for the next school year.
Okay, thank you.
I see Tricia Akinwande.
Hi, thank you, Betsy. This is Tricia Akinwande, Glenridge, Carteret Street. I want to first thank Dirk and Betsy for meeting with I'm speaking on behalf of GRBDIA. I want to first thank Betsy and Dirk for meeting with us last week and for full transparency of the board as well as the community. I just want to go over the 4 items in which we discussed last week. The first was the equity committee. We had asked for a seat at that table so we can partner and collaborate with the equity committee. Dirk has agreed to provide us the calendar of the monthly meetings, so one of us will be able to attend. So we look forward to receiving that communication from Dirk. The second one was regarding the cultural audit. We were asked to provide a recommendation for a vendor to perform a cultural audit. We reviewed several proposals from different vendors, and we vetted each one of them and provided our recommendation of a proposal and to Dirk, and Dirk will bring it forward, has said that he would bring it forward to the board and to the business administrator. But first he wants to consult with his peers to see if they have any recommendations so he can bring forth several different recommendations, not just the ones in which we've already vetted, and get a determination from the board and the business administrator on when and if it can be approved and move forward. the selection in which we made was a very comprehensive selection, and we felt as though it was very good. So we hope that he will go forward with getting other recommendations so we can move forward with that. The third item in which we discussed was the 2021 curriculum, and then moving more of a Black history within the curriculum going forward. That we are still hoping to be able to pilot in the second half of the school year of at least having one Black author as a required reading at each grade level, and in hopes of piloting that for the second half of this school year and have it fully implemented going forward in the next school year. And Dirk said that he would review with the respective curriculum committees and discussion on which books have already been purchased or provided or shipped, and to see if we can get that done for the second half of this school year. And then the last item we discussed was diversity training and professional development. We have met with, we've sent communication to the HSA presidents as well as the principals in each school. And there is a woman by the name of Spirit Tariq, who is the daughter of the Little Rock Nine, where her mother was one of the first 9 students who was integrated in Arkansas public school systems. So she goes around and does audits, and she's been very successful. So we have presented that to the HSAs and the principals, and we've had a good response on that from the principals and the HSAs. So we're looking forward to hopefully having that as an assembly for each of the school levels in this coming school year.
Thanks
Those
so much,
were the 4
Tricia.
items we discussed. And like I said, for full transparency, I just wanted to make sure the community, as well as all of the board, knows what we are trying to do with collaborating and helping to get a more diverse curriculum and education for all of our students. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I was, you beat me to the punch. I was going to report out the committee and liaison reports, but now I won't have to do that. Other questions or comments for the board? Again, use the raise your hand function. Yes, I see Robin Fields.
Hi, thanks. I wasn't sure if I should start in this portion or the second, but I'm just going for it. Anyway,
Sure.
Thank you all for your collaborative efforts on the school year. I appreciate everything that you guys have done and all of the administrators and teachers in the schools. My comment or question really bridges on, I think, what you mentioned earlier about Kelly Chung's email.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have concerns and hoping that the board, and specifically maybe Mr. Phillips, can help get a spring SAT date for our junior class, our 2022s, on the calendar. I know that the senior class, the 2021s, had a fall SAT date, and I think it was really helpful for them. I think our junior class deserves a date also, and I think it would be great if we could do it in the spring, preferably a March, April date, only because things get kind of crazy after then. And I can also just speak personally that my son has had his SAT date canceled twice. I'm not hopeful that the December date is going to happen either. So we have been trying from the beginning, knowing what the 2021s went through, just to see if we can get a date, and it doesn't seem to be possible. So I hope you guys all consider that the climate is not getting better, and that we hope spring will be better, and that a date would be wonderful for this class. I did reach out to Mr. Lawler, just so you know, just so it's fully transparent, and he did acknowledge it and said that they were monitoring the situation and that he wanted the junior class to be completed with Algebra 2. I just think at that time most juniors are taking the SAT for the first time. I just think it would be great, and we owe it to our junior class to do it, and also just to give them the time. I think the senior class had about 3 weeks, and the junior class, I think if they had at least 6 weeks just to prepare would be helpful. So please consider that. And if you do discuss it and have an answer, I would love to get either an email or just a comment back just to hear what was discussed.
Sure. Thank you. Dirk, any comment on that?
No, I will follow up with Mr. Lawler. I know we had some initial discussions about sometime in the spring to offer it to the current juniors. You know, I do have a senior of my own, and it was a very frustrating process in the spring and summer trying to schedule an SAT. So I certainly understand where you're coming from as a parent, but also as an educator. So we will follow up on that and make sure we inform the junior parents of where we stand.
Just as a follow-up, Dirk, when are they doing the PSAT? That also got moved to January, right?
Yes, and that was, I believe, a College Board decision, if I,
yeah.
Okay, other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I will remind everybody that we have another public comment period at the end of the meeting. So we will now continue with the items on our agenda. It is the first meeting of the month. So we have committee and liaison reports. Teresa, let's start with you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So Forest Avenue, we did have a meeting earlier actually in the week, and the school is doing quite well. There have no COVID cases, some quarantine, and so that's a positive. They are working on change of program requests and trying to accommodate families who want to either go virtual or in person. It seems manageable, but that is something that they're working on, and that December 3rd is the effective date to start a second marking period, and that's where that will have to be sorted out finally. The decision was made to the extent that there are half days going forward until the pandemic, I guess, is under greater control. Half days will be virtual. They had parent-teacher conferences this week. Aptitude testing is coming as quickly upon them, and they did conduct some math testing. There is a math program that is going very well, the Title I math program, and the kids are doing a marvelous job on that. That is a math intervention grant program, and we got a nice report on that. Halloween, they managed to pull it out, and the children were very happy, and they were able to have the jack-o'-lantern program. They had a learning garden cleanup with the Girl Scouts and other volunteers, which was terrific. And their mum sale went quite well. They have some board openings. They're looking for volunteers, including president and co-president and co-chairs next year. And they also have a wonderful program in anticipation of Thanksgiving, where they have a tent on the Forest Avenue, outside Forest Avenue School, where they're collecting meals for the Human Needs Pantry, and they service several hundred families, which is just terrific. Their book fair is going to be launched shortly, and that will be for Scholastic money credit only. They have National Education Week up and coming with snacks and meals, and an enrichment program that sounds terrific, Eyes of the Wild. Actually, I think that was happening today, where they have bird and reptiles, and the kids can have some interaction with that. They are looking to bring a diversity speaker in and working on funding with regard to that as well. That's it.
Thank you. Allie.
Okay, hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, hi everybody. I'll give you a brief overview of the home and school meeting at the Glenridge High School, which was held on Friday the 13th, last Friday. Mr. Lawler began the meeting by providing an update on the current state of affairs at Glenridge High School and acknowledged the great efforts of Nurse O'Connor in managing all things COVID. He also announced that marking period 1 grades, or I should say marking period 1 grades were released at the high school today. Dr. Harris followed and announced that the new issue of Pivot is now available online, and gave an update on how the COVID protocols are in place at the high school. She's looking for the middle school read for this year and will keep us posted on her selection. Ms. Grboe announced the formation of a Girls Who Code Club for 8th graders and the launch of this year's peer leadership program. Mr. Hill gave an update on fall athletics, mentioned that teams are entering state tournaments this week, and that football managed to play their full schedule of 6 games. Paperwork for winter sports is due on the 20th. Treasurer gave her report, and Kristen O'Neill announced that the spiritware sale is on. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Paul?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So the Finance and Facilities Committee had a meeting last week to discuss many of the topics that are on the agenda this evening or otherwise discussed in the reports today. Amongst the numerous items that we were discussing, I think we could categorize them, put those in 3 categories. One are both the conclusion of the referendum projects as well as ongoing construction projects. The accommodations or the planning we are doing for this year's budget as well as the start of next, as well as the ongoing adjustments that are required of COVID and some of the associated expenses with COVID, which has required us to be very agile this year in making accommodations. And that's a quick summary of what we discussed.
Okay. Michael.
Sorry, I thought Paul was going to go on much longer. No, but I'm in a similar boat, which is that the curriculum committee met, but a lot of what we discussed has been discussed here today, including the pre-K location, an update on remote instruction, and there was even just a week ago, to show you how far we've moved, there was much more serious discussion about expansion of school days, and things have moved and they've been moving in the wrong direction, but we've certainly are right on top of what's going on, and we're talking about all of these things pretty regularly. We also talk about curriculum review for related arts and world language, which is ongoing. That's what I have.
Okay, thank you. I attended the virtual meeting of the Ridgewood Avenue Home and School Association, and there was a good deal of talk about successful things. Parent-teacher conferences have been held virtually, and the teachers have been receiving positive feedback on that. In the SEL area, they have something called crash houses, which is small group SEL experiences. Grade 3 to grade 6 have created a mentoring initiative. Dr. Donovan talked about things that we've missed, including Veterans Day, where we usually have veterans come in, adoption awareness breakfast, the talent show. But despite the fact that we miss those, school is going on. About 75% of the students are on a hybrid basis. And he reminded everybody in attendance that student attendance matters. In-school days are not optional. If you're sick, you can be absent. If you just don't feel like being in school on your in-school day, that is not an option. He did make one funding request from the home and school. This is for a staff training. A therapist from Baker Street Health is going to come and train the staff on student executive function, which includes memory. So the home and school authorized $500 for that staff training. And that is the Ridgewood Home and School Association report. David.
I have nothing to report.
Okay. Tracy.
Yes, the Policy and Personnel Committee has met twice since our last Board of Ed meeting. We discussed many of the policies that are mandated and are on the agenda tonight, as well as we discussed some updates on the personnel concerns, including leave replacements. I had the pleasure of attending a central school meeting, and I will be attending another one this Wednesday, the 18th. They've just adopted a new mascot, which is a cheetah. Also this week, I believe it's tomorrow, Grace will be holding a virtual meeting. And last but not least, I've attended a couple of the Glenridge Educational Foundation meetings recently. And I'd like to again thank them for all their generosity and their flexibility this year. There have been so many challenges and so many needs that they've met on a very expedited basis this year. And I think the district really owes them a huge debt of gratitude for all that they've been doing, and not the least of which was the big gift that they gave towards the Orton Gillingham. Please, the members of the public, please pay attention to the Educational Foundation. They are reaching out for fundraising at this time, and they've been most generous to us. So, and that's it for me.
Okay, Anthony.
Aside from the committees that have already been reported on, I was contacted by the GRAA commissioners. They wanted to thank the district for putting up the rims for the Forest Avenue's court so they can have their tryouts for basketball. Given what's going on, it's not clear whether they'll have a season, but to try to have as normal a year as possible, it's a big deal to them. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Heather.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So Linden Home and School met last week. We heard about how teacher conferences were coming up, and those would be half days, and all upcoming half days would be all virtual. They have filled all the committee chairs, but they're still interested in accepting volunteers for the various committees. They successfully had 2 fundraisers. They combined the Mum and Crumb, so just mums with the pumpkin walk, and that went well. And they had a very successful spirit wear and were able to, I think, clear out their existing stock. So that went well. Community service had a very successful costume drive. I believe they're doing a food drive for Thanksgiving and looking ahead to what they could do for a winter event. Second grade promotion is just getting started, and they were starting to ramp up for National Education Week with their Teachers Rock theme.
Okay, thank you. And before I forget, it seems a long time ago that we met previously. We last met on October 26th, and as some of you are aware, we've had an election since then. And I wanted to congratulate the winners of the Board of Ed contest, which includes Tracy St. Auburn, an incumbent who will be returning to us in January, and 2 new members, Jocelyn Gottlieb and Duval Graham. Congratulations to them, and we look forward to getting to know them better starting in the new year. All right. Now
Betsy, I had one more thing.
Sure.
Dirk mentioned earlier about the marching band finishing 3rd in states.
Yes.
They also just finished nationally, and this was a large competition of bands from all around the country. They finished 6th. And in a what's called the creative class category, where they made a movie, in the entire country they finished 2nd, which was
that's amazing.
Remarkable. It was really remarkable result.
Oh my! Congratulations to the marching band. That is how they managed to function at all in this environment is astonishing. But they're doing so well. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Continuing with our business items, you all have some minutes in your packets from the board meeting of October 26th, both executive session and regular session. Does anyone have any additions or corrections, deletions to those minutes? Okay, if that's the case, Michael, would you move the minutes?
Yes.
All right. May I have a second?
Second.
Second from David. Barbara, would you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet?
Aye.
Ms. Boyavolucci?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. DeLu,
Aye.
Ms. Lang,
Aye.
Mr. Romano,
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern,
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye. Motion carries. Barbara, question on the administrative items. Did we misnumber those?
Looks like it.
Okay.
So,
I will read out the new numbers before we move them. A1 is the New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum. A2 is the school self-assessment for anti-bullying. A3 is the 2021 Nursing Services Plan. A4 is the first reading of new and/or revised policies and regulations. A5 is the Glen Ridge School District goals. And A6 is the Glen Ridge Board of Education goals. Okay. Before we move on Heather, yes.
I don't see the curriculum goals underneath the education goals.
You are right. I will read out the goals, and we can read the curriculum goal, and we'll amend this motion to include them. Before we move anything, I want to do two things. First of all, you see on A3, the 2021 Nursing Services Plan. I wanted to recognize the school nurses, because if you've looked at the Nursing Services Plan, it contains all the many things that nurses do, and it is just incredible. And their workload is particularly incredible right now. So since we're passing the Nursing Services Plan tonight, or acting on it, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our school nurses for their yeoman-like service, especially during this COVID period. And I also wanted to read out the goals that we are approving tonight after discussion at the last meeting. So A5 is the Glen Ridge School District goals, which are for the district as a whole. Develop a GRPS equity plan, continue the development of a pandemic strategy, and start the strategic planning process. And the A6, which is the Glen Ridge Board of Education goals, personnel, support and review efforts to meet staffing needs during the ongoing pandemic crisis, including staffing needs for the 2021-22 school year as part of the budget process. Review and refine the district's plan to increase diversity in the candidate pool for faculty and staff positions. The finance and facilities goal, oversee changing allocation of financial resources to meet the demands of the ongoing COVID-19 situation. And the negotiations goal, conduct successful negotiations leading to a new contract with the Glen Ridge Public School administrators. And Heather, I don't have the curriculum goal right here in front of me. Can you summarize?
We were going to monitor remote learning, I think, and maybe assessments in the hybrid environment.
I think
that's what it was. And shouldn't there be a communication goal too? Isn't that the committee?
I'm not sure we had strictly communications goal.
There wasn't one? Okay.
Michael, care to elaborate at all on the curriculum goal?
No, it was perfectly worded as it was, and I can't remember it. But, okay. But it's, I mean, the idea was, I think what Heather stated is the idea. Right?
Okay. Betsy, we could add it on the next agenda.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
I think that's a good idea, just so we have it in the form that we agreed upon. So we will do that. Okay. With that, David, would you move the administrative items?
I move A1 through A6.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
Second from Michael. Any other questions or comments on the administrative items? Barbara, will you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet,
Aye.
Ms. Boyle-Vellucci,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. DeLu,
Aye.
Ms. Lang,
Aye.
Mr. Romano,
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern,
Aye.
Dr. Yaris Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye. All right. Personnel items. I draw your attention to the fact that we have an addendum, items 9 through 11. Tracy, would you move the personnel items?
Yes, I move P1 through P11, including the items on the addendum for P2, P9, and P11.
Okay. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a second from Ally. In keeping with our rules, all personnel items are discussed in executive session. Mr. Phillips has already discussed the one item elimination of the aftercare position. So if there are no objections, Barbara, would you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet,
Aye.
Ms. Boyle-Vellucci, Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. DeLu,
Aye.
Ms. Lang,
Aye.
Mr. Romano,
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern,
Aye.
Dr. Yaris Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye. Motion carries. On to the business items, and there's also B4 on the addendum. Paul, would you move the business items?
Yes, I'd like to move items B1 through B4.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. David Campbell. Any discussion on any of these business items? All right, hearing none. Barbara, would you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet,
Aye.
Ms. Boyle-Vellucci,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. DeLu,
Aye.
Ms. Lang,
Aye.
Mr. Romano,
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubern,
Aye.
Dr. Yaris Ramos,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye. The motion carries. We have now reached the second public comment period for comments or questions on agenda or other items pertaining to the running of the schools. The rules are the same. Please use the participants raise your hand function. And again, state your name, confirm your Glen Ridge residence, and you have 2 minutes. Any questions or comments? Questions or comments? I don't see any. All right, if there are no questions or comments, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Moved by David Campbell, may I have a second?
Second.
Second by Paul. Thank you all.